this year, although they've been there for quite a few years, was a photo album that had been kept by Emil Osiek. And when we finally tried to catalog and scan those photos, we found some things that we thought would be of interest for a program such as this. You remember when you were a kid and the neighbors went on vacation, and when they got back, they invited all the neighbors over to see the slides, or if they were rich neighbors, you got to see the 8mm film, you know. And we'll kind of think of this next few minutes like that. And one of the things that I would suggest is, particularly for those of you who are further back, because this is as big as the slides are going to get, is you'd be welcome to take just a minute or two right now and pull your chair in a more convenient spot if you'd like. Closer together is fine with me. And I'll just start talking while you're getting more comfortable. As long as you don't block the view of 2 or 3 people behind you, you can move around as you like. H.W. Osiek was really the patriarch of this family that we'll be talking about, Henry W., I believe, is what he was called as well. He came to St. Charles with his parents from Germany when he was a young man, and worked all of his life in St. Charles. For quite a number of years, he was superintendent of the waterworks. That's a political patronage job, or was at that time. So he didn't engage in a lot of other political things, I guess, trying to make sure that he was going to continue to have a job. I just read a biography about him that Hank Osiek brought it to me a few days ago. His son-in-law, Orville Gherkin, said, if this man had a sense of humor, he never saw any sign of it. But he also described about his interest and involvement in automobiles from an early time. Said that he bought one of the first automobiles in St. Charles, which was a Chalmers, a 7-passenger Chalmers. I went on the internet. These are not the Osiek family photos. That's what would have been puttering around the streets of St. Charles, probably about 1910, 1912 or so. And I wondered if that vehicle right there, Hank, might be that old Chalmers. I don't know. It's the biggest one that's parked out there. He had 8 sons and 1 daughter. Harry Osiek got involved in selling tires before World War I. Actually sold his first tire before he had any stock, then rode the the trolley into St. Louis to pick up the tire so he could deliver it to the farmer that he sold it to. And by World War I time frame, Henry had a battery and auto repair business going on behind his house at 329 North Clark Street. And particularly as Harry and Emil came back from the war, he was interested in them having gainful employment, and they were able to establish the H.C. Osiek Company, which was in business for many years here in St. Charles. Boy, did they have vehicles. Kind of looking back here, you know, some of the things, this was a tourist hotel. This is First Capitol Drive now. And you can see the address right here, 1147 to 1155 Clay Street. It's right where the Genealogy Society was, or we're just down the street from that, right? And right on the highway coming into town. And here's Omar and his service truck at 4th and Clark Street. We have his daughter here, right? Oh, yes. Yeah. Have you seen this picture?
No, I haven't.
Oh, all right, great. And there's Harry and Omar in 1924. And a nice looking car, right? These guys not only serviced automobiles, they drove these automobiles. Now, this is Lucille Fredholt driving the Roadster. This Roadster we'll see in subsequent photos here. They put a lot of miles on that Roadster. It belonged to the Osiek family. I think Lucille worked for the business. She was later Lucille Green, if anybody would remember Lucille. That's about all I know about her, but except that when her husband passed away, she was living in 9th Street, I think. But looks like a flapper, right? That's fun. And back behind her here, the Busy Bee restaurant. But you know, there are times when life in St. Charles gets a little boring and a little cold and frigid, and you get tired of a long winter, like this past one, and you say, I just need to get out of town. And before we move to this photo, you know where we are? You see the water tower? Okay, so this is Clay Street at that time, First Capitol Drive now. So if we got to get out of town, why don't we go to Canada? Get out of this cold weather. So here they are preparing supper in Canada. I should mention that virtually all of my captions on the photos came from a little vinyl notebook, vinyl covered notebook that Emil had carefully typed what each of the photos in his photo album was. Boy, not only did we have the photos, we know when and where they were taken. Up there in Canada, they didn't have the same prohibition laws that they did in the United States. So the boys had to destroy some evidence before they came back across the border. In 1925, they went past this perpetual spring in Hannibal, Missouri. I had to put this slide in because it reminded me of the artesian well in the little town where I grew up, a long ways away from here. And we didn't call it a perpetual spring, we called it an artesian well. By the 1950s, when I was a kid, they had capped the artesian well, but it just bubbled up with this cold, fresh water, and tourists would stop and get them a drink of the water. Well, they had something like that in Hannibal. I can't remember the last time I've seen an artesian spring or now you buy artesian water and it costs you $1.25 and it comes in a plastic bottle, right? And I put this photo in, even though they were almost back home in Hannibal. Now we got them back in New York State. To give you an idea of what some of the roads were like, this reminds me of the roadside going to the Sun Highway in Glacier National Park, which was not too far from where I grew up. But that was typical of some of the mountain roadway that was being built at that time. Well, in 1927, they took a trip east. You got to remember this photo album I'm talking about has over 1,000 photos in it. And at 1,000 words, write a picture's worth 1,000 words. That would keep us here till sometime tomorrow. I had to cull that down a little bit. But I thought this trip east in 1927 was interesting. And they took it in that roadster that Lucille was in. And it's just been driving me crazy. What kind of an automobile is that? And I have decided after many months of research that it's a 1926 Chandler Roadster. This is not the Osiek family. This is a restored Chandler. If you know better, you can tell me, but the Chandler was built in Cleveland. They built over 20,000 of them in 1926. The Model 33 had an inline six and was rated at 55 horsepower. And here they are on the way to New York. They're in Ohio. Does that look kind of like that, Chandler? You look at the louvers here in the engine compartment, this little door back here. The two-tone paint. Very unusual to see two-tone paint in the 1920s, but it's here. And the spoke wheels. Let's go back and, I started comparing the bumpers, the two metal pieces across in the front and the back. I think they had a Chandler, but I could be wrong. Here's here's the Roadster. We'll call it the Roadster in case I'm wrong. In Pennsylvania. And here they are at Altoona, Pennsylvania in 1927. And they went by an exclusive country club in Ohio. These pictures would have been taken by the guys themselves. They might have used one of those old box cameras, or there was a Kodak that had kind of a bellows-like thing. But they're snapshots. These are certainly not professional photos. And so we'll see, like snapshots, some of them are better quality than others, but like I say, in terms of what they tell me about how things looked back in the 20s and 30s, I think there's some wonderful photos. Now they went by some houses of miners in Pennsylvania. You remember Tennessee Ernie Ford singing 16 tons for a mine in Pennsylvania. Talk about keeping up with the Joneses. I don't know, was this management and union? I don't know, but most houses look just like every other house. My wife grew up in a oil camp in Texas, and grew up living most of her early life in company housing. Now this one was captured by email as looking upon 4 states at one time from Pennsylvania. I got out my map. I see Pennsylvania, I see Ohio, I see New York. I can't figure out the 4th state, but that's how he captioned it. And here they are at the top of the mountain. I was really excited when I got this picture. I blew it up so I could see what kind of the car it was, from the emblem on the side. I saw these letters and I blew it up. It's Emil Osiek's initials. Niagara Falls. Many of you have seen Niagara Falls during your life. Here's another picture of Niagara Falls in 1927. And here's Detroit. And when we talked about these automobiles, Detroit was the Motor City, wasn't it? And look, that's a very modern looking city. in 1927. It's sad what's happened to Detroit in the past few years. Apparently, they just have not been able to maintain their industry or their population. And here they are from the Woolworth Tower in New York City, looking down at the harbor. And here's Omar with the Statue of Liberty back behind him there. What do you think? Did you see your dad at the Statue of Liberty?
No, I've never seen any.
All right, well, I'm just checking. I wanted to be able to surprise you. So. And give my regards to Broadway. Who is Wilbert?
Could be Nippert. Could be Nippert. That was a cousin.
The typing in the book is very clearly Wilbert, but I don't know Wilbert who. It's not one of the brothers.
It could be Nippert. The last.
Oh, Wilbert Nippert?
Wilbert Nippert.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were, okay.
Could be his.
All right. I like that answer. And they got up on the Ferris wheel and took a picture of Coney Island. Boy, that looks like more fun than Six Flags, doesn't it? And here's the beach at Coney Island. Must be close to the end of the day because there's sure a lot of trash out there. Then they went on to Washington, D.C., scene that we've all seen many times, the Lincoln Memorial and the Capitol building. And here's Wilbert and Omar on the Capitol steps. Now, you know, what would really get a couple of boys from St. Charles, Missouri excited when they were at the Capitol of Missouri? Would it be the lawnmower? That's government property he's riding on. And I don't know, the boys might have tuned it up before they left. And as they headed home, they got a great picture of looking downriver from a bridge in Ohio. You can see, I presume this is the Ohio River. You can see quite a bit of barge and boat traffic occurring here. And we'll presume they made it home. I got to catch my breath for a minute. You having fun? Yeah. All right. It's not like when you're over at the neighbor's house. It's time for refreshments already, right? Yeah. Well, in 1930, they took a trip west. Had the same roadster, and one of their stops was at the Pure Oil Company refiners at Oil City, Oklahoma. Now, why would that interest them? H.C. Osiek and Company, what was the business that they were in? They sold oil and gas and tires and auto parts, and I mean, this is probably one of their suppliers. They'd be interested, and you can see in the background an oil derrick. Another one here. And then on into New Mexico, the New Mexico desert. And that street hadn't gotten, or that road hadn't got paved yet. The boys from St. Charles must have gotten a little bored with the scenery, is all I could say. And here was an auto camp for one night near Carlsbad Cavern. Now, I would have said Carlsbad Caverns, but his book says cavern, so I guess there was only one cave. But you know, I remember my grandmother talking to my wife and I one time about did you two stay in a cabin last night? Well, no, we stayed at a hotel, but back in 1930, they had these cabins along the road for tourists. And then here they are near El Paso, Texas. I don't know. You could make up a line to go with that. It's that way. No, it's that way. Or let's be careful. Watch out for banditos. And they stopped for breakfast at the Navajo Lodge in New Mexico. I was curious about whether that lodge might still exist. And in fact, you can find pictures on the internet of the lodge today. It's still there, and it looks very much the same. But I found this picture I like even better. This is before the Osieks got there, but this lodge was in business before they had motor traffic. It's probably got a history all its own. I think I understand the humor of this picture. This is a sign to the third forest. Where's the first forest, right? And then a chance to meet with some of the Native Americans while they were in Arizona. Now, if you're going to Arizona as a tourist, where would you go? I mean, what's the number one tourist attraction? The Grand Canyon, right?
Bill,
yes.
Orville Gherkin is the second from the right. That's our dad. One of your former presidents.
Okay.
He is the nephew of these Osieks that did a lot of the travel, but the Orville in there is he.
Okay. So Orville Gherkin is what she's saying. That would be H.W.'s son-in-law.
Not really. What is that grandson? Grandson.
Oh, his grandson. Okay. All right. Well, there are two pictures in the album of the Grand Canyon. This is one of them. Filling their radiator, and they'd been hit by a snowstorm. And here's the other one. It's kind of like some of my vacation pictures, you know. The good stuff, you didn't get the camera out, take the shots. Well, they made it into Lower California. They get to see some canyon land while they were in California. And then, can you imagine how excited they were? Guess who the Diamond tire dealer was in St. Charles, Missouri? H.C. Osiek and Company. In fact, an article from 1961 describes Harry Osiek as the oldest diamond dealer. He's been selling diamond tires longer than anyone else in the United States in 1961. I'm sure they were thrilled to death to see that. And then they were entering Los Angeles. You remember the Western cereals that some of us saw as a kid? Not all of you are as old as I am, but don't those rocks look familiar? Yeah. You know, if they're not the rocks, they're right close. Now they entered via the Eucalyptus Tree Highway, and then the Palm Tree Highway, aptly named, and that looks like asphalt there. And there's Beverly Hills, California, 1930. I found that quite interesting to see what that would have looked like then. And here, with this view, you can start to see that even in 1930, there were some big mansions in Beverly Hills. And here was the beach house of Marion Davies and other famous movie actresses. For you who are fans of 2.5 Men, this looks like where Charlie's house is today. And who is Marion Davies, you're asking, right? Emil would have known who Marion Davies was. Marion was a star of silent movies and made a few talkies as well. And the reason Emil would have known is because he and maybe Harry too would play at the Lyric Theater, which I think later became the Strand Theater. They had a little band, and they would play music as background for those silent movies. So I'm sure he knew who Marion Davies was. Also, Marion was known for the fact that she had lived for several years at the San Simeon Castle. You familiar with that? Who's? Yeah, she was his mistress. Marion, like I say, did get a chance to make a few talkies, but Emil might have also known that that was a difficult transition for her because she stuttered. And this picture was not taken by the Osieks, but if they would have taken it, I'm sure they would have because they liked the car. So a typical California house, that's Emil's words. Another home in Hollywood. Now they're on their way to San Francisco. And I don't know, this is Jed Clampett's car, I think. Emil called it a freak car on the way to San Francisco. Well, I say these guys enjoyed automobiles. And they were on a ferry boat between Oakland and Frisco. And you can see the San Francisco skyline as it was in 1930. And here we see an air ferry taking off in San Francisco Bay. Now, when you think about where aviation was in 1930, wasn't it Lindbergh's flight 1926? 1927. That was just 3 years before then. And here they are with an air ferry serving San Francisco Bay. So what do you do if you're two boys from St. Charles and you see an air ferry? You take an air ferry ride, right? Here's the evidence. We can see the bay from the airplane. And here's another picture of it. Here's the beach and amusement center in San Francisco. Now they must have made this trip in the late spring, early summer. I say that because you've got the snow, but not how dirty it is. If it would have been fall, I'm sure it would have been a cleaner snow. You with me? And the shirt sleeves, and so on. And then Lake Tahoe, and a mountain scene near Reno, Nevada. So that melting snow is coursing down the river. Now this is a sheep blockade on the road to Salt Lake City. I like this personally for a couple of reasons. I think I recognized the mountains a year ago, almost exactly a year ago. I was on I-15, which is in the valley here, those mountains. It's up north, part of Utah, just before you cross into Idaho. And the other thing I like about it, I come from a line of sheep herders, but having grown up in Montana, those western states, even as late as the 1950s, early 1960s, had what were called open range laws. What did that mean? That meant that the cows and the sheep had the right of way. And you also had the rule, you know, you hit it, you buy it. And that was in play in my home, a couple states north of here. And here they are outside of Pocatello, Idaho. I had to put this one in as a terrible picture, but it's the only picture they've got of Idaho. And in 1930, my mother was an 8-year-old living about 75 miles from here on the north side of the Snake River, and my dad was living on the south side of the Snake River, about 75 miles west of here. And to make this germane to St. Charles, Rudolph Goebel's granddaughter was teaching at college in Twin Falls, Idaho, that's not too far from here. That was a stretch, wasn't it? But well, they went through Pocatello on their way to Yellowstone Park. And here's the Old Faithful geyser. My guess is that OSHA has probably required some barriers or something now that weren't then. These are Emil's words, a ritzy hotel in Yellowstone Park. I think it's this hotel right here. I don't know if some of you may have stayed there. A lot of you would have, if you've gone to Old Faithful, you would have seen the Old Faithful Inn. And then a beautiful scene in Yellowstone Park. Emil's words, a perfect picture. I thought that was a great caption for this picture. Here they are near Rock Springs, Wyoming, and you can see on the back of the car an address of 847 Clay Street. So they must have had several buildings where they were doing business. And here they are at the Royal Gorge Bridge in Colorado. Some of you may have been to the Royal Gorge. And the Royal Gorge Bridge was built just a year before this, 1929. Here are Omar and Orville viewing the nameplate on the bridge. It's got the year 1929 by the Royal Gorge Bridge and Amusement Company. And something about dedicated to people who enjoy nature or something down here. This is what it looks like when you look down from the bridge. My first experience in the Royal Gorge was from down there. As a college freshman, I was in a 100-piece marching band, and we were traveling on the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad down here, and they stopped the train and let us get out and walk around for about 15 or 20 minutes, and we could look up and see the bridge. I didn't have my camera with me. And here's the Royal Gorge looking the other direction. You can still see the railroad tracks. And they're back home in St. Charles. Here's Harry of H.C. Osiek and Company. And Hawkins, John, and Oscar, I think were salesmen. Does that sound right, you think? Salesman for the company. This was a pretty good sized company by this time. Their salesman's territory included as far west as Jefferson City. And they were a $1 million sales company in St. Charles for a number of years. And we could put a different down here and call this the gang in St. Charles, right? Or great picture of the time. Now we're going to talk about a trip that they made in 1932. They could have gone by RV, although they didn't. But do you recognize this building right here? Yeah. Just to the west of Miss Amy B's? It still looks just like this, doesn't it? This you probably can't read, but it says rest station, men and women, and the water supply is approved. I mean, this would have been the highway, and they would have had some tourist accommodations. And this guy apparently is on his way to New York City. But the boys from St. Charles are going this time to Florida and to Cuba. And as they do that, they pass through through Mississippi, where they take this picture. Bill Doherty and Omar on the boat deck of the SS Cuba. These guys got around, didn't they? What is that, a 90-mile trip from Florida to Cuba? But they were relaxed. And here they are with Havana up ahead from the bridge of the SS Cuba. And this is their first view of Morro Castle, which is in Havana Harbor. Did just a little bit of research on the Morro Castle and found that when Louis Blanchette was cutting down trees and building his cabin down on the banks of the Missouri River, this castle had already passed 200 years old. It was built in the 1500s. Here they are on the streets of Havana. Must have been a Hertz or a Avis there, because they've got a car. I noticed how empty the streets were. I don't really have an explanation for that. I just noticed that as kind of interesting. This is Sloppy Joe's bar, so I presume they were catering to tourists from the United States. I don't know if the bar is still there. And this is the Capitol building of Cuba, and that building is still serves as the Capitol building of Cuba today. They actually made it out to the castle. And their private car in the tropical gardens of Havana. I like the hats. Well, you eventually have to leave and go home. Here they are in Palm Beach, Florida. You recognize the car, don't you? Just think about that car. We've seen it in Pennsylvania, Ohio in 27, West in 1930, and here we are in 1932. This baby had a lot of miles on it. Still a classic looking car though. Wonder what it costs today. Sold for $1,695 in 1926. Not sure what you could buy the house for then or now. Home in Palm Beach, Florida. And here they are on Daytona Beach, Florida. Those of you who've been to Daytona Beach know that they drive out on the beach and actually raced cars at one time on the beach. Now they've got a NASCAR racetrack not too far from the beach. I kind of like the way this guy's relaxing back there in the rumble seat. Well, they went up and saw Stone Mountain near Atlanta, thinking of the War of Northern Aggression, Bob. This was a tribute to 3 famous men of the Confederacy, and one of them is making his appearance pretty well. One of them's a work in progress, and the third one hasn't yet come out. The 3 men are Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, and Jefferson Davis. So in 1930, we can see scaffolding. We can see that it's still a work in progress. If you go there today, it looks like that. And I understand they have some great light shows. I've been there, but only in the daytime, so I can't tell you about the laser show. But you might want to put that on your list of things, your bucket list. Yeah. And now here's a view from the highway bridge between Nashville and Chattanooga, Tennessee. That would be the Tennessee River. And a reality of travel then, just as now, is occasionally things go wrong. And I'm sure they were interested in stopping to check out this wreck and looking at the wrecker, because they had wrecker service at Osiek's back in St. Charles. They might have even offered some help. And here they are near Cairo, Illinois. Getting close to home. Sometime, I can't tell you that they stopped by Lambert Field on the way home, but that same summer, they were over in Lambert Field preparing for a sightseeing trip. Look at that airplane. You know, if we were to go out to Lambert Field today and watch the Southwest Airlines planes, the little 737s come in and go out, the very newest Southwest Airlines planes, the 737s, will have their wingtips bent up. That's a recent invention. And look at, they've got power here and they've got power here. This is a really interesting contraption. I don't know that I've ever seen a photo of this type of aircraft before I saw it in Emel's book. Well, again, with a vehicle like that, let's go for a ride, right? So this is South St. Charles looking upriver. So, probably today, if you were in the same spot, you'd see the Page Avenue extension. And here's North St. Charles on the Wabash Bridge in 1932. Certainly see the bridge. Well, do you agree? Some interesting photos? And an interesting family. In 1933, they got together for this picture. And Hank, you got to remind me. I think Hank's this one, right? Is that you? Stand up, Hank. That's him. Do you recognize him? Is there anybody else here that was in that photo in 1933? This was the 50th wedding anniversary of H.W. and Caroline. Carolyn?
Not this Carolyn.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Her namesake.
Yes, Carolyn Osiek. H.W. passed away in 1957, or I'm sorry, he passed away in 1941. They had been married 57 years at that time, and his obituary says that during their 57 years of married life, that his was the first death in the family. An interesting statistic. Well, thank you for coming today and listening to me. I'd just like to say in conclusion that it's been a real honor and privilege and learning experience to be the archivist at the St. Charles County Historical Society for almost 7 years. And hopefully sometime I might get invited back for something. In the meantime, you can come hear my story on Rudolph Goebel, and I'll talk about his genealogy on May the 10th at the library. So thank you again.
While we've got him here, we'd like the Osiek family to stay around for just a few seconds afterwards. We'd like to get a couple of photos that we can put in the Heritage or in our newsletter. When we went out looking for an archivist a number of years ago, and we got Bill, we were thinking at first that we had gotten us a good solid Chevy or Ford. Over the years, we discovered we had a Packard or a LaSalle. And somebody took us places as an archive that we had never been. Getting our collections online, getting indices done, serving the public, writing articles for the Heritage, supervising with great skill all of our volunteers at the archives. And he will be sorely missed. So we have a small just certificate here that we're going to present at this time. We are volunteers on Wednesday. If you'll stop by the archives for lunch and board members, we're going to honor them at that point. And Bill, we're going to miss you.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks, Gary. Thank you very much.